Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. It's great to be here at Howl, and I'd like to read some things for you in honor of my sister Helen's beautiful exhibit. So, I'd like to start by reading you a story. It's a true story. It really happened to Helen and me. It's called The Cheerable Brothers. There used to be an old bakery on 9th Street between 1st and 2nd Avenues that occupied a strange space, an old storefront that was a single story tall, tucked in between two old apartment buildings. The storefront consisted of two dusty old plate glass windows with a doorway in between. There was no sign anywhere, no faded lettering to indicate what the name of this establishment was. But behind both of the plate glass windows were broad, flat expanses of wood that were always covered with piles of bread, loaves of every conceivable size, and heaps of pastries, sometimes fresh and beautiful, gleaming with apricot glazes, sometimes all brittle-looking and smashed up and old, and flat boxes containing big sheets of cake. The pieces have been cut from to sell by the pound. Two old men ran this bakery. One was tall and gaunt and thin. The other was all stooped over. But they both had bushy white eyebrows and wild, tangled mops of white hair and big bulbous noses, and they were obviously brothers. Both old, but also both quite agile and spry and commanding. They never called one another by name, but sometimes their sister was there. She was younger and had reddish hair and a much smaller nose. And her they always called Helen. She was a merry woman. The brothers I called the Cheerable Brothers because they reminded me of two kindly old brothers of that name in the novel Nicholas Nickleby by Charles Dickens. The Cheerable Brothers adopted Nicholas Nickleby and saved him from his evil uncle. And I called the bakery the Cheerable Brothers as well. I would say to my sister Helen, I'm going to the Cheerable Brothers. Or if I left to do the shopping, Helen would say, are you going to the Cheerable Brothers? I went there almost every day, except on days when I specifically avoided the place. I was the one who did all the shopping, except sometimes Helen would accompany me to the liquor store to help carry back the large quantities of wine we always kept in stock. Principato was what we drank then, which came in 3-liter bottles. I would give anything to have a Principato bottle now. If I were hypnotized, I might be able to remember the label. I think it was a picture of a castle behind rows of vines in a furrowed field. One day, the liquor store stopped having Principato, and we joked that we had drunk the vineyard dry. There always seemed to be lots of customers at the Cheerable Brothers. They had a sort of dance-like way of waiting on people. One brother crying out, "Next!" or "And you?" And then the other brother crying out, "And you?" or "Next!" Hoisting bread down from shelves, or sliding out huge sheets of honey cake, out of which they cut square chunks, dancing about one another back and forth behind the counter, and sometimes sallying out among the customers to fetch something from the window on the far side of the store, or from bins in the walls. Their sister Helen always stayed behind the counter. She let her brothers do all the hoisting and weighing and cutting, and contented herself with wrapping things in packages and collecting money and dispensing change. All those people who used to go there to shop at the Cheerable Brothers, I remember them. They were mainly people from the neighborhood, Ukrainians and Poles, old or middle-aged, women in babushkas and men in trousers like they don't make anymore except in tailor shops, portly or thin, some Jewish and some not, but all appreciative of Jewish bread and cake, all gone now or grown old. And I was a young man. I don't know when I first discovered the Cheerable Brothers. I think I was 23, a young man as shy as a wild animal, yet I felt bold inside, bold with love of life. I felt a strange and instant kinship with the Cheerable Brothers, like they were long-lost relatives, which did not, however, make me any less shy around them. I knew nothing about being Jewish, although Helen and I had recently discovered that we were Jewish. I was in awe of the Cheerable Brothers. They were the first close contact with Judaism I ever had, the antique Judaism of mystery and bread, the antique Judaism of New York. I learned the names of Jewish pastries, Hamantaschen and Rugelach, and bialys and bulkas and onion rolls, and prune Danish. I usually paid in coins for what I got from the Cheerable Brothers, using change from the food stamps I had spent elsewhere. The Cheerable brothers did not accept food stamps, not, I think, because they disapproved of them. They simply weren't an official enough store to have the right to accept food stamps. One afternoon when I went in, I was waiting patiently for the Cheerable brothers to acknowledge me and ask what I wanted, but they waited on everyone else around me and completely ignored me until suddenly they handed me a big paper bag full of loaves of bread and asked me if I would deliver it to the coffee shop on the corner. They also asked me if I would please bring them back 2 coffees with lots of milk and sugar, and they handed me $1. I was a little stunned, but I said yes instantly. I felt honored to be entrusted with such an important errand. But when I got back with the coffees, both the Cheerable brothers thanked me, and then one of them grabbed a paper bag and began stuffing it full of pastries and handed it to me. And he refused to take any coins from me as he shooed me out of the store. I went home to Helen, wildly excited, filled with curiosity about what the Cheerable brothers had given me. We had both hoped for corn muffins for lunch that day. Sometimes the Cheerable brothers had the most luscious Brooklyn baked corn muffins, but I guessed that we would have to be content with what we had been given. It felt like a generous bagful, and indeed it proved to be a most tasty and filling lunch we had that day. After that, almost every time I went to the Cheerable brothers, they would ask me to do some errand for them, either to run to the Veselka for coffee, or else to deliver bags of bread to different delis and coffee shops in the neighborhood. I would go in, and they would ignore me, waiting on everyone else, until suddenly one of them would hand me a big thick paper bag full of loaves and ask, couldn't I please carry that down to so-and-so's? The bread the coffee shops served with butter are used to make sandwiches, and when I got back, they would make up a bag of things to give me. I'm writing about things I can barely remember, a train of days that became several years. I would go home and find Helen painting, working on a portrait against the wall, and we would have what the Cheerable brothers had given us for lunch, and then I would go into the front room and sit propped against the wall and try to write. And then time would pass and it would be night. When you sit still against a wall, time passes with a slow and excruciating swiftness, and then it is night and time to drink. And in the meantime, you may have written something. We were truly living on very little then, so that when I went to the Cheerable brothers, I had an allotted and very specific amount to spend, 50 cents or 75 cents, and I had to be prepared for the fact that they might charge me, because sometimes they did anyway. There was no telling what they would do. I also had to accept the fact that I no longer had any choice as to what I got at the Charitable Brothers. They never asked me what I wanted, just bagged things and gave them to me, and what I got seemed to depend on some strange, inexplicable whim. Sometimes they gave me luscious things, big chunks of cake, sometimes a pie, usually a little smashed up, but with many colored fruit toppings that looked like a stained glass window. Sometimes a pile of broken shards of Danish that were brittle and stale. Sometimes a whole hollow loaf that was so hard, if you hit it with a hammer, it would have shattered into powder. I developed a real taste for stale pastries. There's something really gravelly and satisfying about the texture of a dry and brittle Danish. I actually hoped for stale pastries sometimes, and Helen never complained, although I think she found the Charitable Brothers' attempts at generosity amusing. I never learned what was beyond the dark little door at the back of the store. The Charitable Brothers didn't do any baking themselves. From various conversations I had overheard, I gathered that they brought in all their bread and cakes and pastries from Brooklyn, from some huge Jewish bakery out in Brooklyn. Brooklyn was a complete mystery to me. I had never been there. They transported everything in a big, roomy, beat-up old black station wagon that looked a little like a hearse, but a most inelegant one. Several of the windows were missing and had been replaced with weathered sheets of plastic taped to the windows. This amazing old vehicle was always parked right out front of the bakery and resembled it extremely. The back of the station wagon was always strewn with loaves of bread and big sacks of Danish. One day, when I went in, the Charitable Brothers seemed very excited and asked me if I would go with them in their station wagon to Brooklyn to pick up something at the bakery. Their sister Helen was there, and I gathered they were planning to leave her in charge of the store. The idea of driving with the Charitable Brothers in their station wagon to Brooklyn was extremely exciting. The idea of traveling with them in the car and of seeing this unknown and huge Jewish bakery that had become mythical in my mind. On almost any other day of the years I had been going to the Charitable Brothers, I would easily have been able to go with them. But on this day, I felt that I could not. On this day, Helen and I were in the midst of repainting our rooms. We had just applied a fresh coat of white paint and were waiting for it to dry so that we could apply another coat. I had promised Helen I would be back soon. The Charitable Brothers knew that I had a sister. Helen had been in there with me numerous times, but I had never told them that my sister was also named Helen. Nor did they know my name, which somehow seems strange to me now. I wonder how they thought of me. They must have had some name for me. For some reason, this has never occurred to me until now. I explained to them that my sister was waiting for me, that we were in the midst of painting our rooms, and that I was sorry, but at that moment I could not go with them to Brooklyn. This was the first time I had ever said I could not do something they had asked of me. But when I got back to the house, I excitedly told Helen about their request. I was truly looking forward to going with them in their station wagon to Brooklyn at some point soon. And Helen said that this confirmed what she had been thinking for a long time, that the Cherubel brothers were planning to adopt me, and that they were grooming me to take over their bakery when they retired. The thought of this filled me with a terrible bashfulness, but also somehow I secretly loved this idea. But after that day, the Cherubel brothers stopped asking me to perform errands for them. Every now and then they would ask me to bring them coffee from the Bazelka, but they never again asked me to deliver bags of bread to places in the neighborhood, and they never again mentioned my driving with them in their station wagon to Brooklyn. And then one day the bakery was closed and it never reopened. I never saw the Cherubel brothers again, or their sister Helen, or their beat-up old station wagon. That was many years ago. I still think about the Cherubel brothers sometimes. I still think that if I had gone with the Cherubel brothers that day in their station wagon to Brooklyn, they might have adopted me. I might have wound up becoming a baker and running a little Jewish bakery on 9th Street called the Cherubel Brothers. This next piece is called There is a Painting of Me by Helen. There is a painting of me by Helen hanging on my wall, a painting I love. It's one of many paintings Helen has done of me over the years. It's one of the earliest ones. What's strange about it is that Helen didn't plan on it being a portrait. She was just painting a man. I was there, so I posed for it. But it is a portrait of me. The fact that Helen wasn't trying to portray me, just to paint a young man, let her capture me so simply in some strange way, at least to my mind. I look lost somehow, but not worried about being lost. Lost and there at the same time. And in my eyes, I think that I am looking at myself. Helen really got my mouth, I think, if I dare speak of my own mouth. There's something sad about my mouth, serious and sad, I guess, vulnerable, but also hopeful. Those are just words. It's hard to say what Helen got in a few simple strokes in that mouth she painted so long ago, that mouth of mine. I am naked. I think I am about 22 years old. I am standing there full length, naked, and Helen really got my feet, my big bony feet. Helen always did great portraits of my feet. I am standing on the sand, and in the distance is a strip of sea. I'm standing lost on the shore. That's how I've always felt about myself. I am the young man in that painting, half in love with sorrow, that young man who is still a boy lost on the shore. And when I am alone with myself, at my most serious, my truest, when I am alone with my musing self, I am that young man still. I hope I am. He is who I am when I write. I hope I am him still. So I will go back to him now to write what I can hardly say. I am thinking of my love of men. I probably wasn't thinking of anything when I posed for that painting, but if I was, if I thought as I thought when I was alone, when I was my most secret self, I thought of love. At 22, I didn't know what I would write. I thought of love. For me, love was sorrow because it was my love of men, a love that seemed to me impossible, impossible. But I believed in impossible love. I was in love with love, in love with my desire. I didn't know what I would write. I was 22. I was starting out. So, I love to wander aimlessly. That's the main thing I do with my life, is I wander aimlessly on foot. And sometimes I write about my wanderings. So I thought that now I would read you some poems about my wanderings in New York, some New York poems. Quite a few of them are about Prospect Park. That's one of my favorite places to wander. This is called The Road. There is a road in Prospect Park that I love. It leads from the concert grove to the bridge over the lagoon. It leads uphill from the concert grove, curving slightly, and then it reaches a stretch that I consider to be a lost place, a place along a road that leads nowhere. If you go forward, you will reach nowhere. If you turn and go the other way, you will reach nowhere. Either way along this road, you will reach nowhere. This is the lost place. The road crosses it, leading either way towards no place that can be known. There is no turning back. This is the lost place. Here my heart is at ease. Here I am content. Here I wander. This is the road that crosses the lost place. Sometimes in the summer, I sit down in the grass beside the road, stunned by the sun in the grass, stunned into stillness by the sun lying gold in the grass. I lie down in the grass and feel the hot gold beneath me. I cover my face with my straw hat and feel the hot gold lying on top of me. I lift my hat and look up at the branches above me, at the green of the leaves gone gold in the light. I am content to lie there in the green gold grass. It is a summer afternoon along the road to nowhere. And I should tell you that that kitty is named Chomper. That's the gallery cat. And oh, is that a doggy? And there's a doggy here too. So I'll read you another Prospect Park poem. This one is called At the Lefferts' House. The Lefferts' house is an old farmhouse that's on the edge of Prospect Park. So this is At the Lefferts' house. I'm sitting on the back porch of the Lefferts' house in the rain. I've just had a fried chicken picnic. It's growing dark, the middle of October, 2 weeks to Halloween. I feel like the Lefferts' house is my house. In the rain, I have the whole place to myself. I wonder how long it's been since someone lived here. I feel like a young boy sitting on the back porch in the rain. A boy who is sorrow. A boy who is melancholy. A boy who is solitude. A boy who loves the rain. Such a boy must once have sat here and will sit here again while the rain falls out of time beyond the porch eaves in the coming dark. Almost Halloween of his 67th year, wandering still. This is my house. So, I'm a little confused here, but hopefully that will be okay. I read this poem a few days ago, so some of you have probably just heard it, but I feel like reading it again, so I will. It's called The Concert Grove. There was a place in Prospect Park with busts of great composers, of Beethoven and Mozart. I would sit there. I loved it there because there was much underbrush behind the bust of Mozart where you could pee. There were huge sycamore trees, and almost no one came there, and I could sit there for hours. I would try to write, or just be happy sitting there, and Beethoven frowned and looked very forbidding, and Mozart, behind whom almost everybody peed, looked so happy. And the trees grew, and it was the concert grove, and I would sit there and try to write. And if I left there, it would be to go into even darker parts of the park, more dangerous, more beautifully abandoned. There were trees I loved there. Oh, how I loved the trees. Oh, how in love with life I was, and knew nothing. This is called Spring Turtle. I went out onto the bridge over the lagoon and looked down into the water, down at the sky reflected in the water. And first I saw a bubble, and then a snout, and then two paws and a shell, and there was a turtle. And this is another Prospect Park poem. It's just called In the Park. Will I be murdered in the park? The black ripples squirming on the lake tell me that tonight someone will dare to kill me. Will he be a black boy, suddenly beautiful with a knife, or a white boy with a face as solitary as the moon? Let him be beautiful and alone, my killer, come with swift blows of the knife. I am come to a lost road in the woods, a road lost in the depths of the park at dusk. I am alone on a road as gray as the sky it curves beneath. Wind sighs like sea among the boughs. Shadows hasten through the trees. The place is lost where I would go. Gray sky and gray road. I am come for this. This is called Far Rockaway. In Far Rockaway, as it grows dark, the street lamps don't light. For a wanderer in a strange neighborhood that is frightening yet beautiful, the gathering shadows become the hills the sidewalk goes over. The darkness beckons of grass where houses stand. They come toward me on their way to beauty in the night. Walkers there, goers home, setters forth, young black folk in the night. Earlier, there were corn patches, sunflowers and vines growing in the September sun, and the wild tangled pubis of the dunes, and beyond, the groaning onslaught of the sea. How still in the sand, how still the wind, the poised vibration, how still the insects shrieking in the light. I'll just read a few more. Here are two Coney Island poems. This first one is called The Shore Hotel. The Shore Hotel is an old hotel, empty since first I saw it many a year ago. Empty by the sea at Coney Island stands the Shore Hotel, looking at the sea from many a window, rising in the night like deeper emptiness up into the sky. And this is called Dante's Inferno. Dante's Inferno looks like a place I would like to live. If they shut the whole operation down, it would make a good house, a real plantation place. What a facade! Hell's veranda with upstairs windows and balconies and entrances and exits into the interior through swinging doors meant for trains. Well, I'll just read two more. This one is called the Brooklyn Public Library. I have been going to the Brooklyn Public Library for some time now. I always enter by the children's section. I have no child but myself. I grow bemused and want to sit still. I think if I grew still enough, I could be a child again. There is a stillness in the library that dreams of the trees outside the window, blowing silent in the wind, that dreams of the light. Stillness dreams. I would be as still as dreaming light. I would be a child again. And this last one is called The End of Summer. The end of the summer is here again. I feel the same melancholy I have felt since I first knew summers ended. The melancholy of the cricket's valiant singing in the early coming dusk. The melancholy of the child who soon must return to school. The melancholy of the summer's end. I wish that I could be again 11 years old in the backyard, watching the night come early and feeling the change in the leaves. The crickets can't sing away. I wish I had to go back to school so I could be 11 years old again and dread it. God, I've forgotten the end of it. Hold on, let me look it up. I wish I had to go back to school so I could be 11 years old again and dread it. Why must I, like the crickets, grow old? Why must I, like the summer, end? And all that was to Helen for her beautiful exhibit.